In ancient geography, especially in Roman sources, Dacia was the land inhabited by the Dacians. The Greeks referred to them as the Getae, which were specifically a branch of the Thracians north of the Haemus Mons. Dacia was bounded in the south approximately by the Danubius river, in Greek sources the Istros, or at its greatest extent, by the Haemus Mons.Moesia. A region south of the Danube was the core area where the Getae lived and interacted with the ancient Greeks. In the east it was bounded by the Pontus Exinus and the river Danistros, in Greek sources the Tyres, but several Dacian settlements are recorded between the rivers Dniester and Haemus, and the Tisa to the west. At times Dacia included areas between the Tisa and the middle Danube. The Carpathian Mountains were located in the middle of Dacia. It thus corresponds to the present-day countries of Romania and Moldova, as well as smaller parts of Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary, and Ukraine. Dacians were North Thracian tribes. Dacian tribes had both peaceful and military encounters with other neighboring tribes, such as Sarmatians, Scythians, and Celts. A Dacian kingdom of variable size existed between 82 BC until the Roman conquest in AD 106. The capital of Dacia, Getae, located in modern Romania, was destroyed by the Romans, but its name was added to that of the new city built by the latter to serve as the capital of the Roman province of Dacia. Nomenclature. Classical era. The Dacians are first mentioned in the writings of the ancient Greeks, in Herodotus and Thucydides. Geography. The extent and location of Dacia varied in its three distinct historical periods. 1st century BC. The Dacia of King Burbista stretched from the Black Sea to the river Tisa and from the Balkan Mountains to Bohemia. During that period, the Getae-Dacians conquered a wider territory, and Dacia extended from the middle Danube to the Black Sea littoral and from present-day Slovakia's mountains to the Balkan Mountains. In 53 BC, Julius Caesar stated that the lands of the Dacians started on the eastern edge of the Hercynian forest. After Burbista's death, his kingdom split in 4 states, later 5. 1st century AD. Strabo, in his geography written around AD 20, says, "As for the southern part of Germany beyond the Albes, the portion which is just contiguous to that river is occupied by the Suva, then immediately adjoining this is the land of the Getae, which, though narrow at first, stretching as it does along the Ister on its southern side and on the opposite side along the mountain side of the Hercynian forest, afterwards broadens out towards the north as far as the Getae, but I cannot tell the precise boundaries. On this basis, Langel and Radan, Hoddinot and Mountain consider that the Getae-Dacians inhabited both sides of the Tisa River prior to the rise of the Celtic Boyar, and again after the latter were defeated by the Dacians. The hold of the Dacians between the Danube and Tisa was tenuous. However, the archaeologist Parduch argued a Dacian presence west of the Tisa dating from the time of Burbista. According to Tacitus, Dacians bordered Germania in the southeast, while Sarmatians bordered it in the east. In the 1st century AD, the Iazyges settled west of Dacia, on the plain between the Danube and the Tisa rivers. According to the scholar's interpretation of Pliny's text, the higher parts between the Danube and the Hercynian forest as far as the winter quarters of Pannonia at Carnuntum and the plains and level country of the German frontiers there are occupied by the Sarmatian Iazyges, while the Dacians whom they have driven out hold the mountains and forests as far as the river Theiss. 2nd century AD, written a few decades after the Roman conquest. Parts of Dacia in AD 105 to 100 106. Ptolemy's Geographia included the boundaries of Dacia. According to the scholar's interpretation of Ptolemy, Dacia was the region between the rivers Tisa, Danube, Upper Dniester, and Siret. Mainstream historians accept this interpretation. Avery Berenger, Fall Mountain, Wildman Mason. Ptolemy also provided a couple of Dacian toponyms in South Poland in the upper Vistula River basin, Susudava and Setidava. This could have been an echo of Burbista's expansion. It seems that this northern expansion of the Dacian language, as far as the Vistula River, lasted until AD 170 to 180, when the migration of the Vandal Hastingi pushed out this northern Dacian group. This Dacian group, possibly the Costa Bossa Lipita culture, is associated by Goodman Schutt with towns having the specific Dacian language ending Dava, i.e. Setidava. The Roman province Dacia Traiana, established by the victors of the Dacian Wars during AD 101 to 106, initially comprised only the regions known today as Banat, Oltenia, Transylvania, and was subsequently gradually extended to parts of Moldavia, while Dobrija and Bujak belonged to the Roman province of Moesia. In the 2nd century AD, after the Roman conquest, Ptolemy puts the eastern boundary of Dacia Traiana as far east as the Hierosis River. In modern Romania, Roman rule extended to the southwestern area of the Dacian kingdom, to parts of the later Principality of Moldavia east of the Siret and north of the Upper Trajan Wall, and to areas in modern Muntinia and Ukraine, except the Black Sea shore. After the Marco-Manic Wars, Dacian groups from outside Roman Dacia had been set in motion. So were the 12,000 Dacians, for the neighborhood of Roman Dacia, sent away from their own country. The native country could have been the Upper Tisa region, but other places cannot be excluded. The later Roman province Dacia Aureliana was organized inside former Moesia Superior after the retreat of the Roman army from Dacia. During the reign of Emperor Aurelian during AD 271 to 275, it was reorganized as Dacia Ripensis and Dacia Mediterranea. Cities. Ptolemy gives a list of 43 names of towns in Dacia, out of which arguably 33 were of Dacian origin. Most of the latter included the added suffix Dava, but other Dacian names from his list lacked the suffix. In addition, 9 other names of Dacian origin seem to have been Latinized. The cities of the Dacians were known as Dava, Deva, Delta Alpha Upsilon Alpha, Delta Epsilon Beta Alpha, Delta Alpha Beta Alpha, etc. In Dacia, Asadava, Arjadava, Buradava, Dokidava, Karsadava, Klepidava, Kumadava, Markadava, Netandava, Patridava, Pelandava, Perburadava, Petradaua, Pirabaradaua, Ramadaua, Rusidava, Sasadava, Sanguidava, Setidava, Singadava, Tamasidava, Utidava, Zarjadava, Ziradava, Susadava, 26 names altogether. In Lower Moesia and Scythia Minor, Aediba, Buteradava, Giridava, Dorsadava, Capadaua, Ma'idba, Sasadava, Skadava, Sargadava, Sukidava, 10 names in total. In Upper Moesia, Iadaba, Brejadaba, Danube, Disudaba, Atadaba, Kuimidaba, Zisnudaba, 7 names in total. Gildoba, a village in Thracia, of unknown location. Thermidaua, a town in Dalmatia. Probably a Grecized form of Germadava. Pulpudava, today Plovdiv in Bulgaria. Political entities. Rubarbostas Ghetto. Dacians inhabited both sides of the Tisa River prior to the rise of the Celtic Boyar, and again after the latter were defeated by the Dacians under the king Burebista. It seems likely that the Dacian state arose as an unstable tribal confederacy, which was united only fitfully by charismatic leadership in both military, political and ideological religious domains. At the beginning of the 2nd century BC, under the rule of Rubarbostus, a Dacian king in present-day Transylvania, the Dacians' power in the Carpathian Basin increased after they defeated the Celts, who previously held power in the region. Orioles, a kingdom of Dacia, also existed as early as the first half of the 2nd century BC under King Orioles. Conflicts with the Bastarnae and the Romans, against whom they had assisted the Scordisci and Dardani, greatly weakened the resources of the Dacians. Burebista, a contemporary of Julius Caesar, ruled Getae-Dacian tribes between 82 BC and 44 BC. He thoroughly reorganized the army and attempted to raise the moral standard and obedience of the people by persuading them to cut the vines and give up drinking wine. During his reign, the limits of the Dacian kingdom were extended to the maximum. The Bastarnae and Boia were conquered, and even the Greek towns of Olbia and Apollonia on the Black Sea recognized Burebista's authority. In 53 BC, Caesar stated that the Dacian territory was on the eastern border of the Hercynian forest. Burebista suppressed the indigenous minting of coinages by 4 major tribal groups, adopting imported or copied Roman denarii as a monetary standard during his reign. Burebista transferred Getae-Dacian's capital from Argedavid to Sarmizegetusa Regia. For at least 1.5 centuries, Sarmizegetusa was the Dacians' capital and reached its peak under King Despalus. The Dacians appeared so formidable that Caesar contemplated an expedition against them, which his death in 44 BC prevented. In the same year, Burebista was murdered, and the kingdom was divided into 4 parts under separate rulers. Cassius, one of these entities, was Cassius's state, to whom Augustus betrothed his own 5-year-old daughter Julia. He is well known from the line in Horace. The Dacians are often mentioned under Augustus, according to whom they were compelled to recognize Roman supremacy. However, they were by no means subdued, and in later times to maintain their independence they seized every opportunity to cross the frozen Danube during the winter and ravaging the Roman cities in the province of Moesia. Strabo testified, although the Getae and Daci once attained to very great power, so that they actually could send forth an expedition of 200,000 men, they now find themselves reduced to as few as 40,000, and they have come close to the point of yielding obedience to the Romans, though as yet they are not absolutely submissive, because of the hopes which they base on the Germans, who are enemies to the Romans. In fact, this occurred because Burebista's empire split after his death into 4 and later 5 smaller states, as Strabo explains. Only recently, when Augustus Caesar sent an expedition against them, the number of parts into which the empire had been divided was 5, though at the time of the insurrection it had been 4. Such divisions, to be sure, are only temporary and vary with the times. Despalus ruled the Dacians between AD 87 and 106. The frontiers of Mons Dacia were marked by the Tisa River to the west, by the Carpathians to the north and by the Dniester River to the east. His name translates into strong as 10 men. Roman conquest. Trajan turned his attention to Dacia. It was on the Roman agenda since before the days of Julius Caesar, when a Roman army had been beaten at the Battle of Histria. From AD 85 to 89, the Dacians under Despalus were engaged in 2 wars with the Romans. In AD 85, the Dacians had swarmed over the Danube and pillaged Moesia. In AD 87, the Roman troops sent by the Emperor Domitian against them under Cornelius Fuscus were were defeated and Cornelius Fuscus was killed by the Dacians by authority of the ruler Diopanius. After this victory, Diopanius took the name of Decebalus, but the Romans were victorious in the Battle of Tarpi in AD 88 and a truce was drawn up. The next year, AD 88, new Roman troops under Tetius Aelianus gained a significant advantage, but were obliged to make peace following the defeat of Domitian by the Marcomanni, leaving the Dacians effectively independent. Decebalus was given the status of king client to Rome, receiving military instructors, craftsmen and money from Rome. To increase the glory of his reign, restore the finances of Rome, and end a treaty perceived as humiliating, Trajan resolved on the conquest of Dacia, the capture of the famous treasure of Decebalus, and control over the Dacian gold mines of Transylvania. The result of his first campaign was the siege of the Dacian capital Sarmizegetusa and the occupation of part of the country. Emperor Trajan recommenced hostilities against Dacia and, following an uncertain number of battles, and with Trajan's troops pressing towards the Dacian capital Sarmizegetusa, Decebalus once more sought terms. Decebalus rebuilt his power over the following years and attacked Roman garrisons again in AD 105. In response, Trajan again marched into Dacia, attacking the Dacian capital in the siege of Sarmizegetusa, and razing it to the ground. The defeated Dacian general Decebalus committed suicide to avoid capture, with Dacia quelled as the Roman province Dacia Traiana. Trajan subsequently invaded the Parthian Empire to the east. His conquests brought the Roman Empire to its greatest extent. Rome's borders in the east were governed indirectly in this period, through a system of client states, which led to less direct campaigning than in the west. The history of the war is given by Cassius Dio, but the best commentary upon it is the famous column of Trajan in Rome. Although the Romans conquered and destroyed the ancient kingdom of Dacia, a large remainder of the land remained outside of Roman imperial authority. Additionally, the conquest changed the balance of power in the region and was the catalyst for a renewed alliance of Germanic and Celtic tribes and kingdoms against the Roman Empire. However, the material advantages of the Roman imperial system was attractive to the surviving aristocracy. Afterwards, many of the Dacians became Romanized. In AD 183, war broke out in Dacia. Few details are available, but it appears two future contenders for the throne of Emperor Commodus, Claudius Albinus and Pescennius Niger, both distinguished themselves in the campaign. According to Lactantius, the Roman Emperor Decius had to restore Roman Dacia from the Carpo-Dacians of Zosimus, having undertaken an expedition against the Carpa, who had then possessed themselves of Dacia and Moesia. Even so, the Germanic and Celtic kingdoms, particularly the Gothic tribes, slowly moved toward the Dacian borders, and within a generation were making assaults on the province. Ultimately, the Goths succeeded in dislodging the Romans and restoring the independence of Dacia following Emperor Aurelian's withdrawal in 275. In AD 268 to 269, at Naissus, Claudius II obtained a decisive victory over the Goths. Since at the time Romans were still occupying Roman Dacia, it is assumed that the Goths didn't cross the Danube from the Roman province. The Goths who survived the defeat didn't even attempt to escape through Dacia, but through Thrace. At the boundaries of Roman Dacia, Carpa were still strong enough to sustain 5 battles in 8 years against the Romans from AD 301 to 308. Roman Dacia was left in AD 275 by the Romans, to the Carpa again, and not to the Goths. There were still Dacians in AD 336, against whom Constantine the Great fought. The province was abandoned by Roman troops, and, according to the Breviarium Historiae Romani by Eutropius, Roman citizens from the towns and lands of Dacia were resettled to the interior of Moesia. Under Diocletian, c. AD 296, in order to defend the Roman border, fortifications were erected by the Romans on both banks of the Danube. By AD 336, Constantine the Great had reconquered the lost province. He took the title Dacicus Maximus when he restored Dacia back to the Roman Empire in 336 AD. However, following his death, the Romans abandoned Dacia permanently. Roman Empire is the Dacian Empire. According to Lactantius, Emperor Galerius affirmed his Dacian identity and avowed himself the enemy of the Roman name once made emperor, even proposing that the empire should be called not the Roman, but the Dacian Empire, much to the horror of the patricians and senators. He exhibited anti-Roman attitude as soon as he had attained the highest power, treating the Roman citizens with ruthless cruelty, like the conquerors treated the conquered, all in the name of the same treatment that the victorious Trajan had applied to the part of conquered Dacians, forefathers of Galerius, 2 centuries before. Dacia after the Romans. Victohali, Typhals and the Vingians are tribes mentioned for inhabiting Dacia in 350, after the Romans left. Archaeological evidence suggests the Gepids were disputing Transylvania with Typhals and Tervingians. Typhals, once independent from Gothia, became federator of the Romans, from whom they obtained the right to settle Oltenia. In 376, the region was conquered by Huns, who kept it until the death of Attila in 453. The Gepid tribe, ruled by Ardavich, used it as the base, until in 566 it was destroyed by Lombards. Lombards abandoned the country and the Avars, dominating the region for 230 years, until the kingdom was destroyed by Charlemagne in 791. At the same time, Slavic people arrived peacefully. They were considered lower class and servants, and they were permitted to enter and work on the land.